friction in games. A game putting up some sort of resistance to the player, trying to make things challenging, but usually not overly hard. Like, it's not the same thing as difficulty where a game can be easy but still have certain aspects of friction to it, and a game can be hard but also not have much in the way of preventing the players from doing certain things. So we'll talk about friction with certain examples of games where sometimes the friction gets decreased over time. So what Remake comes to mind is the Resident Evil series, where you have the original Resident Evil games, where I made the videos on the GOG versions, which are closer to the original Japanese release. So I had more ammo to work with, more resources, and more mechanics. Someone who played the North American PS1 version, or the version available now on PS4, PS5, those would have less resources and less mechanics. There's more friction put into the game because they didn't want people to rent the video game. But because of this aspect, there are some people who advocate that people should only play those versions of the games, which now they can put whatever version they prefer, especially since it comes to the question of, and then go with the version toned down via localization for money reasons, or go with the one that's closer to the Japanese release. That would be the more comfortable ride by comparison. But the GOG version does have its own mix of the fact that it made Jill's playthrough have less friction since she gets free saves. Chris has to save, but in the GOG versions, the ink ribbons are placed around the locale, so rather than just being in obvious places, you gotta work for it more than you did on the PS1 version. Sure, there's more ink ribbons in the PS1 version, North American PS1 version specifically, but they're now in different locales and make it a bit more difficult to actually save your game. And I highlight Resident Evil because then you come to something like Resident Evil Requiem, where now you can just craft your own ink ribbons, making the idea of placing them in certain locales basically nowhere near as much friction, or even with that feature, is the fact of the game's locales aren't that big for Grace, so there's less progress being lost for her if you were to use the ink ribbon mode and die, adding less to the friction to the point where I question why even bother with the ink ribbon mode if there's really not much for the game to really do with it. Resident Evil 4 Remake with the added impairment mechanic with the knife. Now that thing is a massive change when it comes to the friction of the game. Sure, the enemies are more aggressive in Resident Evil 4 Remake compared to the original, but the knife can just trivialize all of that because it's something you can go and repair at the shop, make better and improve, and also carry extra knives, so they have less durability and are less useful, but with the amount you can just carry with you, it can just make things way less friction because of the fact of you can just avoid attacks. You also have the perfect parry mechanic, which won't even use the durability of the knife as well, making things way easier to deal with, on top of the fact that the stuff Leon can parry getting ridiculous. To help make this point, here is unedited footage of me doing the Krauser boss fight at Resident Evil 4 Remake. Enjoy!
Are you ready, rookie? Yeah. Let's settle this. I'm not surprised you made it this far. Not bad. I didn't expect anything less. After all, I know your potential better than anyone. It's a damn shame you can't see the truth.
Okay, we back? Okay, you see how the knives just completely trivialized Krauser entirely because he couldn't really get much of a hit off of me? You also have the button prompts for dodging that also add less friction because now rather than needing to be away from Krauser attacks, the game could just go push this button to avoid the attack, which isn't anything new for Resident Evil, but for Resident Evil 4, it is new to it since it didn't really have that kind of button prompt aside from certain certain cover-based instances. But just the fact of the fight, and that was my first attempt on it, just got completely trivialized because the knife meant Krauser couldn't actually hit me, and I could just shoot him with a magnum and obliterate him. The dodge meant even if it was an attack that I might have trouble trying to parry, well, now here's a free dodge as well, just get me out of trouble. The Dead Rising series is a good example of this, going from Dead Rising 1 where, hey, you got a lot of resources you can use, some of it's not the best idea to use, and yeah, there are some really good weapons that combined with some of the books can be really good. Once again, you have to find out and look for where to find those combinations, find those SMGs as well, find all these resources in order to actually get the things done. So you put more effort into exploration and we got more out of it. Dead Rising 2 decided combo weapons. The individual weapons are now not as good, but the combo weapons require the effort of needing the workbench or getting the combo core to begin with. Sure, you could use the scratch cards, but you can't use the combo weapon to its full effect under those circumstances, adding a trade-off. Top of the fact that not all combo weapons are good for certain boss fights, so you need to figure out more stuff in order to actually upgrade your arsenal. A very good trade-off, I felt, when it came to that. Dead Rising 3 asked the question, what if convenience, which I feel is a trap many developers fall into when it comes to removing friction, but what is convenience is when Dead Rising 3 decided, hey, now I can make combo weapons on the spot, which many enjoy because they found the workbenches too inconvenient. Even if the inconvenience is also kind of the point when it comes to making these powerful weapons. Another thing is, hey, if you upgrade further, now you can make it so you don't even need the exact item. Any item of its type can be substituted in, which once again creates another problem of now there's less effort the player needs in order to just become super powerful. Once again, is something that's like, hey, that's convenient, but friction is getting made worse and being removed because of how convenient it is. Then, on top of that, you just have the weapon locker that allows you to pull out super combo weapons after a certain amount of time, but it's just a fact of, once again, too much convenience is not trivializing any friction the game is supposed to have. What's the point of these massive hordes of zombies, these special zombie types, and everything, if you can just go and do that? Dead Rising 4 is taking a step further by classifying each weapon as their own type separately, so now you even have less control over it, because now they put everything into their nice own little bin. So you can't throw food and stuff like that, and you can't just, oh, take this sword and toss it, because that's not its purpose. It's not a throwing weapon. Means now it's more controlled and streamlined on what you're able to do to begin with, which means, once again, despite having these massive hordes of zombies, showing off your technology and how many zombies you can spawn in for the players to go against, what kind of threat do they actually put up against a player who has way too much power on their hands? Another thing is also item limits in RPGs. There are some people who don't like in RPGs cap how many items you're able to carry. I remember one people keep noting is the Tales of series that caps only have 15 of each item because they don't want you to just have 99 items and just go crazy. With some people being like, that's a weird number, or they don't like that aspect because it's not convenient. You know what happens when you don't have that number? You have Final Fantasy 15 and lets you carry 99 of each individual healing item, which means the idea of ever dying is basically nothing but a fantasy because you have so many things to just keep going on and on and on and on and on. What does death mean to a person who's carrying 99 Phoenix Downs, which means they can never actually go down unless they choose to let it happen? So it's one of those aspects where even an item limit is designed to have friction, so you can't just constantly abuse what you have. If a game were to just remove it, well then, here you go. Now you can just be basically immortal through the power of money. Probably the biggest case of people going back and forth on a friction mechanic is weapon breaking or degradation. And usually Breath of the Wild and the Kingdom are always the main, like, game being used for its example. But for me, I don't have an issue with the weapons breaking. This is the fact that the weapons have stats, so that's what makes it my nuisance. The fact that they break. Them breaking, it'd be a fun mechanic. It wasn't for the fact that, oh, there goes my powerful weapon, I need to go get another one. And yeah, there are features in the game in order to make it get another one, but it's not a fun kind of friction where the enemies are getting stronger as you go in. The more Blood Moon that keeps happening, the more start spawning in stronger enemies, so you need stronger tools to actually match up with them. But because of the fact that weapons break, even those powerful ones have like the same amount of durability, it means you need to go out and way to get more powerful weapons, since the ones the game make readily available aren't exactly the best ones, especially for later in the game. Like, another game that uses breakable weapon thing does it better is Far Cry 2. In fact, Far Cry 2 has several cases of friction, but when it comes to weapons, there's a certain amount of use to them before the weapons start having issues, like the fact that they start jamming and I need to take time to fix the gun jam while enemies are after you. Or, if you use them too much without trying to replace them, they flat out break entirely, which in the middle of a firefight is always bad. Yes, by default you always have a knife to rely on, but you don't want to really get close to the enemies with that kind of thing. So, it's kind of thing of, you need to keep going back to your base and swapping out your weapons or an armory. There are ways to circumvent it, as the weapons aren't exactly big stat-based thing. They can be upgraded to affect certain aspects, but it's the fact of you can replace them simply. It just requires going back to a certain location in order to do so, and them breaking is the end of the world, so you can take more from the enemy, and the one the enemy has will still be decent enough, although it'll probably start jamming and breaking soon afterwards because the enemies don't really swap out their weapons like you do. There's a fact of, for Zelda, it's the fact that they have the stats attached to them, which is why them breaking leads to more of a problem, where it becomes bad friction. And then Far Cry 2 is more the fact of the weapons breaking aren't the end of the world, but at the same time, it leaves you massively inconvenient if you're over in the middle of a firefight. And that's on top of Far Cry 2 also having malaria that you have to manage by getting the pills needed, which requires doing special side quests as well for that, or the fact that if you are on the last bit of health, you also have this special animation where the character needs to remove something or fix some injury on them, leading to, I'm gonna dub the famous injury animations because how many people love watching them. But the fact of, there are several ways Far Cry 2 tries to inconvenience the player to add friction, but it's never to, at least to me, an obnoxious degree with how the game functions. It adds the friction to the game, or to make sure there are things you're doing, but it never actually undermines everything else in the game, or makes it feel like it's a complete chore to do. Probably the biggest source of back and forth conversation when it comes to friction in a game is maps, specifically a mini-map. Many will praise a mini-map because it allows them to know where they're going and what paths they've gone to, or if they're heading towards a plot location and go, okay, I don't want to go there yet, let me explore around the area a bit more. But other games don't have a map or a mini-map because they want you to explore the locale more naturally, and you end up going through the story path and go to the next area. Well then, you just gotta deal with it, or deal with whatever the game puts you against, and then go back for the thing you're looking for. But mini-maps, I see people debate back and forth because many feel the need to turn off mini-maps, feeling like the mini-map as an entire mechanic has the player staring at the mini-map solely and not anything else on the screen. They're not paying attention to this entire game world in front of them. They're paying attention to a tiny little box that has the most important information that they need to know when it comes to actually exploration, which is why some flip mini-maps are a blessing and a curse when it comes to games, but that it removes friction because it gives you so much information at such a convenient pace. Well, again, remember, the added mini-map didn't have it, is the Pixel remaster of Final Fantasy, which just gives you maps of locales. And yeah, in games like Final Fantasy 2, it can pretty much trivialize dungeons, since dungeons tend to have rooms that just have nothing in it to bait you to go inside, and a mini-map will just tell you whether or not the room is pointless, and allow you to just immediately go to the next progress thing, defeating the entire point. Or if Final Fantasy 1 has many rooms to explore for goodies, but you just want the beaten path, the Pixel remaster allows you to just immediately see what the next area you need to go is. That's for games with a map fully laid out. You also have other games like Final Fantasy IV DS, which has the player filling out the map themselves, so you are the one charting the path, and you get a bonus if you do fully chart out the entire locale. So there are also maps like that where you do get overlaid where to go, it's just the fact that now you're the one setting it up. Or even some games turn the mini-map into anything but the word mini. Like, one thing I remember from the game Crystar is the fact that you can just have the map be overlaid on top of the screen. I believe also for the Calamity effect 1 and 2. You just put the map on the screen and make it the main thing you're looking at while you're exploring, and I've seen people go back and forth because some hate a mini-map, so why would they want it on top of the entire screen itself? But something here to add convenience in order to add less friction in the game. Convenience, convenience, convenience ends up stockpiling to add less and less friction into a game. Hell, speaking of map system in games, Etrian Odyssey has you make your own map, make you chart out the pathway yourself, so you're doing the actual job of exploration and the job of charting out the map. It also means that when it comes to marking stuff, you can make it more personal yourself, add your own little tidbits to the map in order to make it easier for you to understand as well. So it really wants to be fully engaged when it comes to the exploration and making map system, because again, a lot of games either just give you a full map, let you obtain a full map, or have you chart out the map, just not in the same way as Etrian Odyssey. It also helps with knowing where you've also been on the map to keep track of your progress. I've seen roguelikes get accused of being a genre that removes friction, but I disagree, because you can play a game like Hades 1 and 2 that are roguelikes, so certain things will always maintain and always progress, but the games are not easy by any means. Yes, they are easier compared to a roguelike, but even then, roguelikes, because of the fact that you start fully from scratch, can give you more crazier things per run. Binding of Isaac and its 5 different versions can have the most insane ability that can potentially carry you in a run, while a roguelike, certain things will progress, so it'll be easier over time, but from what I've seen, it generally means the abilities you get can't be nearly that busted because of everything else you already are obtaining. The Mega Man series, and I am realizing how many Capcom franchises I mentioned in this video, but because of Mega Man is a series where people expect for the game to just have weird bits of friction to instantly kill you, like so many traps for instant death. There's so many do or die scenarios where the friction is try to pretty much get past this moment where you have to do things absolutely perfectly right and stuff like that. But people expect it because of Mega Man, to the point where Mega Man 11 still has the whole entire thing of, oh, here's one checkpoint in the middle of the stage and one checkpoint during the boss room, and that's about it. You know, Mega Man 11 also kind of reduces friction, allows you to just buy items and E-tanks, so there is that. But Mega Man X3, which is my favorite of the X games, is where suddenly these friction aspects of Classic Mega Man are now suddenly a complaint from people. Like the fact that, hey, Classic Mega Man has specific checkpoints. X3 does as well, but now she has a complaint that they got put way too far back by X3. Hey, enemies deal a lot of damage, making it seem to be more perfect compared to other games. Granted, the armor part also highly reduces damage, won't mention that part, or the fact that the bosses are also way slower to compensate compared to previous entries because of opportunities to just obliterate Mega Man, or the fact that you can use Zero as well, giving you a second life bar, with Zero being a fully upgraded and canned out character. So, once again, you have way more tools at your resource in order to use. But I see people go, no, X3 is just badly made because of the friction it adds, because of how much stuff they give you. Or the fact that boss weaknesses just completely prevents the bosses from really being able to fight back against you, everything. And despite all this, despite these complaints of how much stuff they gave to us to fight back as a player, it has so many things to also make things easier. I mentioned the chest parts being the best. You have the gold armor, which has all 4 secret chip abilities completely installed. You can get the Z Saber for X, stuff like that. It's easier to defeat Sigma in this game with just the Buster and regular armor than it is at X1. So, once again, I don't get to complain how this game tries to add more friction by making the journey more difficult, because yeah, it starts out as the game punching you in the face, but as you keep going, you're gonna grab that fist and make the game punch itself. Detective mode in Batman Arkham Asylum, a revolutionary mechanic that's revolutionary because every game decides to just copy it wholesale, but the whole point of the mechanic is that you're able to see where the enemies are, if they're armed or not, what's their condition, in order to help you plan out a way of attack and then executing. The problem was, while they made it intentionally a harsh look so players wouldn't want to keep using it all the time, players would still use it just fine. So, Arkham City, Rocksteady went, okay, the draw distance is lowered as you use it, so enemies far in the back will look like they just vanished when you use it, making it so they get to jump on you because of the fact that you're relying too much on detective mode and not on your own vision. An inconvenience in order to balance out this mechanic. A cool way of doing that and adding friction to the game, so that way you don't just rely on this win button. A very cool aspect that they then promptly forgot in Arkham Knight, but Arkham Knight's over there, we're over here talking about Arkham City and how it magically convenience people. And you can tell it worked because there are people who complain of why do some enemies when they just vanish in detective mode. Yeah, that's the point. So you aren't abusing it and they start realizing how much they overly rely on detective mode, and that is a cool way of handling the mechanic. Devil May Cry 3, Mad Capcom games really are the big face of this, aren't they all? Devil May Cry 3 Special Edition on Nintendo Switch. They add a feature that was added in Devil May Cry 4, which is the ability to swap between all of Dante's styles. Original Devil May Cry 3, and it's still an option in the Switch version, you can only equip one style at a time, and only equip 2 weapons at a time. They add the freestyle mode, where you can now swap between all other styles in the same way you do Devil May Cry 4, and carry all of Dante's weapons in the same way as Devil May Cry 4. Done to bring more cohesion as a bonus mode, only in the Switch version. Granted, there have been PC mods to do a freestyle thing for years, but that's beside the point. However, when it comes to the way it is implemented, what I don't like it is the fact that, one, Devil May Cry 3 was clearly not designed for Dante to be this versatile in his moveset, or the fact that with the way they designed this, it also means that you need to level them up more because the fact of you level them up by using each style. And since each style has like 3 levels, constantly swapping between them means less XP for one single style as well. So it's one of those aspects where I find, okay, it's a neat bonus feature, but it's not my preferred way to play Devil May Cry 3, but it's something they added in just as a cool way of, hey, here's a bonus feature, but I've seen people treat it as something that's a necessity because of the friction in Devil May Cry 3, where certain bosses will be better off with certain styles, but that's also the point of swapping between them and trying out different styles and their different abilities. But now you can just do it to push one button, meaning there's less effort from the player, and it means the player doesn't need to fight a boss with a different style that may not be perfectly suited for it. Persona 3 introduced the calendar system and social link mechanic into the franchise, adding this friction aspect of trying to match the social link with all the friends you can make in the game, but the developers initially thought it wasn't actually possible to do all the social links, so when they found out it actually was, there was a bonus incentive given in the form of the Persona Orpheus Telos, along with the re-release FES, making some changes to the social links, just adding one to the night schedule, so that way it'd be easier to do, but still require a lot of effort on the player in order to achieve. Then Portable decided, well, we had less friction, because one of the aspects that people complain about when it comes to Persona 3's rendition of social links is the fact that you have to date all the girls, and you try to date two girls at the same time, the jealousy mechanic will kick in, and then no reverse or potentially break. So people decided, okay, for Portable, let's make it simpler to where jealousy is not really much of a thing in this rendition of Persona 3 Portable, making it so there was less friction, but still the task of doing all the social links was still made to basically be complicated, especially if it was trying to be done on the first playthrough and would need a guide to really try and fully plan out. Persona 4 is more lenient when it comes to social links because of the fact that the reverse social link mechanic only really happens with two characters in the game, adding more lenience to the mechanic, on top of the aspect of you can just have these random events where characters from the social links can just meet up and gain extra points as just free events that can just potentially happen, but is a super cool aspect with it. But that wasn't good enough. So, with Persona 4 Golden, they did add in two new social links. One social link doesn't require games to need to get to rank 10, and one social link actually has more availability later in the game because developers really wanted to do that social link in order to unlock the new content that Golden has to offer exclusively, adding more lenience to it on top of the fact you can now venture out at night in Golden, once again adding more lenience and aspects to this, reducing friction of maxing out social links. But clearly those changes still weren't good enough because Golden also adds in, I believe, about a month and a half of extra time so you can still do more social links. And this is something you get even if you don't fulfill the requirements for the bonus content in Golden. So even if you don't max out one of the new social links in order to get this content, you still have to go through January and I'm like half or so of February in order to actually complete the game. So you get this extra time, adding more leniency whether you want it or not. Persona 5 decided that wasn't good enough because of the aspect where now there is no reverse social link mechanic, period. There was planned to be a doubt mechanic, basically the same idea, but it got scrapped, and generally whenever I ask people whose favorite entry is Persona 5, they say that they are glad the idea got scrapped because they don't want to deal with the issue of potentially messing up during social links and having a setback. So there is no reversing within Persona 5 in the finished release. But they took it a step further, because in Persona 3 and 4, there were social links that can only progress during the school time. So during summer, you didn't have access to them. Persona 5 basically made every social link doable outside the school, and even during summer when the character has events in the school, you'll just be allowed to go inside to do the social link event anyway. So once again, adding less friction to the mechanic of social links, because now even the limit of needing to do school-based social links in the school doesn't even matter. Any rest of social links can just be done outside the school whenever. This is on top of way more activities that also adds towards Joker's social stats, making the possibility of maxing out all social links and maxing out all your social stats within the first playthrough easier than ever in Persona 5 because of how many different things they give you in order to actually make it happen. Even some social link characters will also just give you things that benefit finishing other social links as well, or giving you more time, such as the fact of, oh, normally you can't go outside after going to a dungeon, Persona 5, well, here's a character that, when they're maxed out, will give you the ability to do that. So, once again, adding less friction and just making things easier and easier. But god damn it, man, that just wasn't good enough, man! So Persona 5 Royal comes into the picture, adding in 3 new social links. One social link only goes to rank 5 unless you do the new story content. One social link is available pretty early on, so you have plenty of time to do it. And one social link that's required for the new story content gets more availability later in the game. So if you slack off on them, you will have your chance to complete your social link. And funny enough, they're actually the only social link that fully requires the school. So they're actually unavailable during the summer as well. So kind of funny they actually added in that case with Royal with this one particular character. If you do unlock the requirements for the new story content, then you do have access to an extra month to be able to do more social links. Even though it doesn't make any sense with the context of the story, but roll with it, progress of your social links still progresses during this extra month and everything. So, they give you extra time, on top of Persona 5 already being more lenient, and also Persona 5 Royal having more methods to gain more points with your characters towards their social links. So, once again, they just kept reducing the friction of the mechanic, which defeats the point of having the mechanic when the whole point of a counter system with limited time is to add friction and add more emphasis to the choices you make. So to reduce it constantly just defeats the points. And yet he complained that his belly was not yet full. Persona 3 Reload decided, okay, we're gonna keep the removal of jealousy that Portable started, but we're gonna make it to where reversing social links now requires more time passing between interacting with people. So it's harder to trigger. It's still there, but it's so much of a case of you basically have to go out of your way in order to trigger reversing social links. You still have the bad dialogue prompts that reverse social links, but now they've been reworded to let you know they're the blatant bad option, because apparently people need to be told, don't just randomly kiss someone who kind of said they may have feelings for you, and don't try and immediately hug someone who nearly got physically assaulted. So that was made easier, since apparently that needed to be made easier for people. But you still have the tight schedule of Persona 3. So it's not like Persona 5 Royal level is easier, and there's no extra time being given. So there is still a challenge involved, just a less strict challenge with less friction compared to the earlier versions of Persona 3. On top of the fact that you have more ways to gain social stats and interact with your party members to help increase the social link system. However, you also have the linked episodes with the male party members that do take up time, so you do have that bonus thing of, oh, you wanted that social link? Oh, but what if this person wants to hang out now? And if you miss one of these, you can't get the next one. Enticing to make you potentially screw up your schedule. Another case of friction is also lives and game overs, and how, hey, a lives counter means once it runs out, you have to redo a level. Or get a game over in a game means getting back to your last save point. And it's another thing where people feel like these are things that should change to be more convenient. Some people don't like lives counters and feel they only had a feature back in the days of arcades, which, what? And that they should be removed, that the player should only be sent back to a checkpoint if they were to die in a game. So in this case, let's say a platformer. Even though now you're asking for a checkpoint system to be added when there probably wasn't one before. So it's a case of you just want a less of a punishment rather than actually something that benefits the game. You just want the game to be having less friction over everything else. It is one of those aspects where people tend to push back on this idea because that's basically what it's about. It's want the game to be easier to do, rather than they believe actually benefits the game itself. Or when other games add in stuff like, oh, here's autosaves. Autosaves are convenient and are generally very good to have. The issue becomes when a game autosaves a lot, like let's say you're playing some horror game and it autosaves to the point where, well, I can just do whatever stupid thing you want because the game already saved. Or when a game only uses autosaves, like Xbox 33, where in that game, people will purposely change their equipment slightly just to force the autosave because you can't manually save and they want to make sure you don't lose progress. Help! Kind of whole entire thing when it comes to autosave. But there are people who will complain when a game that uses manual saves doesn't have an autosave feature down the line because they feel like manual saves are outdated mechanic, even if it's a game that allows you to save anywhere, kind of thing. That's a whole other thing, add less friction. The fact of remembering to save your game. But people think that friction shouldn't exist anymore just because we have technology. I also want to ramble about the topic of friction in games and how there's just many cases where some friction gets removed because it's seen as, well, what if we gave the player more ability in the next title, which ends up decreasing friction more and more in favor of making the player way more powerful. And some people just enjoy a power trip, and not nothing inherently wrong about that by itself. There's also franchises that are known for certain friction aspects, as though another entry does it, suddenly now it's a complaint. So stuff like that comes back and forth with how friction functions in the game in order to make sure the player is still engaged and actually paying attention to what they're doing. So that's about a topic. Alright then, go out there, play games with or without friction, because there are many genres are associated without friction being more simple fun time as well. Although some people say Minesweeper has no friction. Minesweeper is mind-boggling test on your psyche and try to get things right. But that's all I gotta say about a topic. Alrighty then, good day.